Damn right, everybody. It's the HooperCast movie hour on this Monday night. Excuse me. My goodness. Yeah, anyway, it's welcome to the show. Phone number 251-333-8732 if you want to leave us messages. What's some other stuff? Facebook.com/HooperCast, YouTube, iTunes, at Connor_Dempsey, at Dustin Weldon. And yeah, happy New Year, everybody, and welcome to the HooperCast Movie Hour, where we talk about movies for roughly an hour. And joining me, of course, once again, is Dustin Weldon.
Hey, everybody.
Man, how's it going, dude?
It's good. It's good.
Is it good?
It's better now.
What is the it of which you speak, Dustin?
Yeah, okay, so this is a long story, but I'm going to try to keep it brief. So last Thursday. I woke up, got ready for work just like any other day, got dressed, went downstairs. My wife was doing her makeup down there, so I went down there to say hey and play with the dog a little bit, who was down there keeping her company. Mm-hmm. Everything was great. And then I was like, oh, Dustin's a little hungry. So I walked up the steps to the kitchen. And when I got to the kitchen, I immediately felt something kind of weird. Like, it just felt like something was off, like really suddenly. Mm-hmm. And Sarah reminded me that I had already complained a little bit about, like, my stomach felt upset that morning. And so, but this felt different. This felt like something strange. And so, I took a few steps and like walked to the sofa that we have in the living room and put my hands on the back of the sofa and just kind of stood there for a second. Mm-hmm. And it felt like a small pain in my back. And so I was like, this just feels weird. Like my whole body now feels weird. And so just from a pain in the back, which is really weird because I have back pain, but this felt different. So I walked back downstairs and I told her, I was like, hey, I don't know what's up, but I'm going to actually just go back up and lay on the bed for a minute. Like, I feel like I can't stand up. Oh. And she was like, are you okay? And I was like, yeah, I think so. I think it's just a back thing. I need to go upstairs. So I walked up the steps. And then got to our bedroom and immediately just went like face first onto the bed. And so I'm laying there on the bed and now the back starts hurting even more. So it's like the wave of pain is like ramping up and it just keeps getting higher and higher and higher and more intense to the point where now I'm on my back and then I'm on my stomach again, and then I'm on my back again, and I'm like, I don't know what's better. Like, I can't find a comfortable place. So now I'm on my side. Then I get up, and I'm like, maybe this bed is too soft. So I lay on my back on the floor, and I'm like, that doesn't help. That actually hurts a lot worse. So then I lay on my stomach on the floor. Still nothing. So now I get up, I lay back face first on the bed, and the pain is just increasingly ramping up. At this point, I'm in a sweat, and like my whole body is now feeling like my fingers are going numb, and like things just aren't right. And it came out of the blue, and so I text her, and I'm like, "Hey, come upstairs." Like a voice to text, I support it, and so I'm like, "Hey, come upstairs." So she comes upstairs, and on her way up, I dry heaved the deepest dry heave you can possibly imagine. Oh. And I was like, oh, Lord, I have to go to the toilet right now. And so I stand up, but my back hurts so bad, I can't take more than like 5 steps. And so now I'm in the doorway between our bedroom and the bathroom. And that's when she comes up and she hears me do another really deep dry heave. And she's like, she thinks I've thrown up in the floor, but I just woke up. Like, I don't have anything in my system to throw up. Oh. So I go to the toilet and kind of like hang my head over it and dry heave like, I don't know, 3 or 4 more times. But what that was the pain was so intense that I could not vomit. And so like I ripped my shirt off because I'm just like so hot, and then when my shirt comes off, almost instantly I am so cold. So I rush back to the bed, but I can't rush, so I'm just kind of like waddling back to the bed. And when I lay back on the bed, like I'm Danny DeVito as the penguin, and I'm just
I've seen you waddle in pain, Dustin. It's a funny image to me. I'm sorry.
It is, and it happens every once in a while, and so, but nothing like this has ever happened.
Never do you waddle with joy.
No, waddling is strictly for pain and misery, and so I go back, I lay in the bed, and so now like I'm on the bed, and I tell Sarah, I'm like, okay, will you like call my mom or my dad or something, because at this point I'm just thinking like, this is so weird. I don't ever remember anything like this happening. Like, and now I'm just thinking like, I know Sarah's got to go to work, so I'm like, if somebody can take me to the ER, that's probably the best thing. So she's like, sure. So she tries to make the call. So I crawl under the covers because I'm so cold, and then instantly I'm so hot, and it just kept flip flopping. Like, I don't know if it was the pain was making me hot, but the house we were keeping cold, and I don't know if it was just like, it was just too much. And so anyway, the point is like, so I'm under the covers, and now the pain is so intense that I can't speak, and I also cannot not flail about like a madman. So I can't figure out, is it better on my stomach? Is it better on my back? Is it better on my side? Do I need my legs extended, or do I need to be in the fetal position? What needs to be happening? And I could not I couldn't pick one. It was just constantly changing over and over and over. And all the while, like, my back is just killing me. It's on fire. And like I'm sweating. I can't, Sarah's trying to talk to me, and everything I'm saying, I'm repeating like 500 times, like it's a mantra, because I'm just like, I can't speak, and I can't control my vocal cords. And now she's like, okay, you've got to breathe. And I can't control my breathing because, I'm trying to do like long, deep breaths, but instead it's just like hyperventilating. And the whole thing is just so unbearable. And I cannot like in words explain the pain, because it was so severe in my back that it was literally affecting every other part of my body. But the other parts of my body, they weren't in pain. Like, my legs weren't in pain, but my legs were trying desperately to do something to relieve the pain. And so like everything was just like in a state of like topsy-turvy agony. And so anyway, like this goes on for about 45 minutes. And at that point, we had decided, mostly my wife, although I had some input because I couldn't speak a whole lot, but like, I knew she needed to get to work, and there wasn't necessarily enough time for her to call out of work and them to get it covered and all of this stuff. So my dad was like, look, I'll come over, I'll take you to the ER, whatever we got to do. And I'm also thinking like, well, I can't sit in a car, and I also can't sit in an ER. Like, cause I can't move, and, or rather I can't not move. And anyway, the point is, my dad gets there about the time that it starts like winding down. And so the pain starts to go away. I stand up. I'm like really dizzy, and like my eyes can't look at anything in particular. They're just kind of like floating in the cosmos. And so anyway, as it turns out, when I got a little bit better, I went over to urgent care. We stayed there for a little while. It took about 2 hours for them to take me back to see me. And they said,
wow, not so urgent.
I know, right? They told me what my suspicion was, which was that it was most likely kidney stones. Mm-hmm. So I go, I have to, now go get a CT scan. So I go to the hospital, and I'm sitting in the imaging center, and they called me back fairly quickly. The CT scan was really quick. They knew like exactly what to look for. So it's like a really narrow part of your body that they're doing their scan on. So it only took like probably 90 seconds total. And so I was in and out, and then a few hours later, I got the call from the doctor that was like, yeah, okay, so it's definitely kidney stones. All that pain that you were having, you are probably passing one or something. Because it looks like
something.
Yeah, because they said it looks like you've passed one. Now, I don't know how they know that. But they said that fine. And
they
then
just tell you to drop your pants and go, oh yeah, you've passed a kidney stone before.
Right. I have no idea how they knew, unless they were looking at the images and like, I don't know. Anyway, the point is I guess I had passed one, or it moved or something, but regardless, the point is they said it looks like there's still another one in there.
Wow.
So I obviously didn't go to work that day. I called out for the next day and was like, I don't know if this is going to happen again. I don't know if it's going to happen overnight. I don't know if it's going to happen like on my way to work while I'm driving. Like, I don't know, because it came on so quickly. It was like 2 minutes from, oh, I feel weird, to this is agony.
Yeah.
And so like if I'm on the interstate and that starts, I'm out. Like that is completely unsafe. So I stayed home the next day. I never did pass it. But what they told me was that it was so small that it's possible that maybe I could flush it out of my system, with just enough water or whatever. But that it was small enough just to pass on its own. Like, it didn't need to be, like, I don't know, pulverized, like with a laser or whatever it is that they do. But regardless, that was super sucky pain wise. I don't know if there's still one in there or if it's gone away or what, but I have not had another attack like that. So theoretically, I guess it's still possible that I could have another. They gave me a prescription for some like heavy duty painkillers, so that in that 2-minute period where, oh my gosh, I feel weird. If that starts again, I can at least pop one of those and maybe cut some of the pain.
Yeah.
It's not like a super heavy duty painkiller, but it's heavy enough that this is typically what they prescribe for stones.
You might want to crush it up and snort it if you feel that pain again.
Right, exactly.
Oh, God.
So, yeah, man, I don't know. All I know is it is not fun. I don't recommend it. So drink a lot of water.
Yeah.
Lord, if they're able to actually like retrieve the stone, they can run a test and figure out what it is that caused it. Like, is it calcium? Like, maybe you need to cut back on dairy.
I thought you were going a different direction with that. Like, it's my keychain now.
Right. I use it now in my ear piercing. Or I think because there's calcium ones and there's a couple different other like kinds, and then they can tell you like, okay, you need to do this differently in your diet.
Right.
But we don't have that with mine, so I don't know what I'm doing that's causing it, if anything. So regardless, like they just said, like just keep up drinking water like crazy. They didn't say to change anything, just to drink a lot of water. So I'm in the process, even as we speak, of drinking a lot of water, hoping that these things don't come back. Admittedly, I don't drink as much water as I should, so that probably does make it worse when it comes time to get rid of it, or whatever. But yeah, man, it's an experience, dude. I've had a lot of people tell me after that they've had stones before. And evidently it is the worst, from what I'm understanding. It's one of the worst pains that you can go through, that is not like an injury. And some people, I guess really women are the people saying this, that it's comparable to childbirth in terms of the actual pain of it. In fact, someone that I work with said that his wife has had 3 kids and kidney stones, and said that the kidney stones were worse than any of the kids. So Obviously that varies from person to person. It depends on how big the stones are. It depends on what they're made of, like what kind of stone it is. Again, I don't know anything about mine. I have a hard time believing that what I went through is comparable. Maybe it is, but I feel like it's easily the worst pain I've ever been in my life, by a long shot. Not even like, oh yeah, but this is close. No, this is like leagues away from anything I've ever felt. So it's insane.
Jeez.
So I'm happy to be here.
Oh my God, dude.
Because in that little moment, like I thought this sounds like what I've heard about when it comes to kidney stones, but when you're going through it too, it's just like, not knowing what it is, like not knowing what your body's doing, or if this is going to last 30 minutes or an hour or be chronic forever, is a thing. Because, you know, when you're going through it, it's like, okay, I know that the pain is in my back. Did I tweak my back in such a way that I'm going to require physical therapy and be this way for a long time? Or is this something that will pass in 30 minutes? And so having said that, what I keep saying is, even if I do go through it again, I'll know exactly what it is when I go through it. And just the mental knowledge of what you're going through, I think would make it a whole lot more, I was going to say palatable. That's not the word. Make it a lot more bearable. You know, you can kind of at least be like, okay, eventually it's going to be done. So anyway, we'll see.
Yeah, knowledge is power. I think when you have, I think when stuff like that happens, there's a very primal thing that happens where you're just like, this hurts and I don't know what it is. Like it's right. It is like truly like a you know, like a double-edged sword there. It's not the word I'm thinking of, but a two-headed dragon, I guess.
Yes. Yeah, totally. So anyway, if during this podcast at any point I just go, now you know why.
If you just scream in agony.
If I just scream like loud nonsense.
Well, you might scream some nonsense when you look at the weekend box office.
Hey, good segue.
About as good as I can do from what we were talking about.
Right.
Okay, so let's talk about things. Over this first weekend of January, we're seeing mostly just the continued box office returns of December. I was going to say successful releases, because we're now in January. The Las Vegas to Los Angeles drive of the movie going season it just sucks, and there's nothing to see.
Yep.
Debuting, the only movie that debuted in the top 3 over the weekend was Escape Room at number 2, which knocked Mary Poppins Returns out of the number 1 spot, earning itself $18 million. Looks like it's a budget of $9 million, so good for Sony for keeping the overhead low there, and giving people something that I guess they wanted to see.
Yep.
Yeah, so like I said, Mary Poppins is bumped down to number 3 now, from number 2. This is the 3rd week in the box office. Did it debut at 1? No. No, it did not. No, of course not. Because number 1, of course, is still Aquaman.
Yep. Which has been number 1 for 3 weeks in a row now.
That's very good for Warner Brothers and DC.
That's what they hoped for.
Brought in $31 million this weekend. That puts the total domestic gross at $260.
The total worldwide at $943 million.
Wow.
Which is officially the largest opening that DC's, or the largest total worldwide number in DC's history.
Can you imagine telling Warner Brothers and Zack Snyder, like in 2012, like, actually the biggest moneymaker is going to be Aquaman.
Yeah, they would laugh you off the face of the... Are you kidding? We're going to do Justice League.
Yeah. We've got Batman versus Superman, okay?
Right.
Idiot.
It's based on a Frank Miller comic that it hardly references.
Frank Miller is a big box office draw. Stupid.
Yeah, just look at The Spirit.
And then a bunch of other stuff is now out of the top 3. Of course, did the Mule... Oh, it's fourth week. Okay, I'm getting something mixed up, so never mind then. Okay. Yeah. Yeah. Anything else debut of the weekend? No. I mean, like I said, it's January. So
yeah. January's typically like a dumping ground for movies that the studios are embarrassed by, or just movies that don't matter.
Right, and I think that, of course, what we'll probably see in the coming weekends is that Aquaman's just going to sit there and keep making money.
Most likely,
pretty much. I mean, it's number one for 3 weeks in a row. The other two films, I mean, the film it debuted with, Mary Poppins, has fallen a spot. Escape Room is not going to last. I mean, it's just going to sit there and keep racking up cash for at least a couple more weeks in the number one spot. But I don't even know what's coming up in January. But again, like we said, not much.
Yeah.
Yeah, because I'm looking now at Fandango, what's opening this weekend. And the only thing I've even heard of, so I've heard of A Dog's Way Home, but I think, it just sounds like a familiar sentence, which I'm sure is some ingenious marketing ploy to get me to relate to this dog.
Yes.
There's also replicas with Keanu Reeves that
exists.
Yeah, nothing's going on this weekend at the box office. It's all. I don't know. There really is nothing to say.
But the following weekend, Glass comes out, which I think will knock Aquaman off of its number one spot.
Okay, I didn't realize that's coming out in January. Wow.
Yep. I don't know why.
Well, hopefully not for the reasons we think.
Yes,
for a January release. So, what studio is Glass?
That's a good question.
I think it's like, oh god, it's like
it's Universal.
It is.
It is.
Wow.
Yeah.
Okay. Well,
interesting.
We'll see. Yeah. Okay. Well, there's not really any film news to speak of right now. The only things recently that have happened, I sort of touched on the Daily Show last week. On Friday, I think it was. Pretty much Dustin. I mean, people can go back and listen to that, but just to sort of backsell that episode, I briefly touched on this idea of making a Pirates of the Caribbean movie without Jack Sparrow that Disney's apparently considering. Kevin, apparently, it's not out of the realm of possibility that Kevin Hart could still host the Oscars. He has the support of Ellen DeGeneres, which is pretty significant. And I saw today that apparently Bob Iger's like, yeah, I mean, I'm fine if he hosts if he apologizes, which to me I thought he already apologized.
Yeah, but you weren't fine with James Gunn.
But you weren't paying attention. I know that's the thing. So that opens up a whole new can of worms of, I think that Kevin Hart should be allowed to host, but I do think that Disney should be appropriately criticized for their lack of consistency, but not Twitch, of course, they might react and go, "Oh, never mind. Kevin Hart cannot host. You're right. We must remain consistent." No, I mean you should apologize.
Right.
Oh, what else is going on? Just a couple of things here and there, really, but nothing too huge. That Kevin Feige's saying that they knew while Avengers 4 was in development that they were going to call it Endgame, which I'm not convinced is true. Even because the Russo brothers basically said that's not the case.
Right.
And apparently there's some interest between Marvel and Adam McKay for him to do a Silver Surfer movie, which apparently he's a big fan of, and he's already sort of in with Marvel from Ant-Man. And is a much larger name than he was when he was doing Ant-Man. So, just, a few things happening here and there. But mostly quiet on the film news front. Golden Globes were last night. We watched it a little bit because my wife is optimistic and so we watched some of it, but not, I didn't really watch the middle. I watched a few things. I did see Jeff Bridges get the Cecil B. DeMille Award. And so that was really cool. They had, did you see any of that?
No, I didn't. But I did hear about it.
They started out with like The Stranger from The Big Lebowski saying like, there's a man named Jeff, and they cut it before it says Lebowski, but then at some point, Sam Elliott came in and did some reads in a sound booth, and so he kept it going.
That's awesome.
So he talks about, here he is making his big screen debut. And it's like the first time Jeff Bridges was in a movie as like a baby. And so it was this really cool tribute to Jeff Bridges and his career. And then he came up and made, a sort of incoherent, but really tied it all together, sort of really tied the room together, kind of speech up there about, it was just really cool. And the stuff that I saw, there's only one or two people who accepted awards where it was like, okay, shut up. Like you're like, we don't want to put up walls between each other, and we don't want, okay, stop. The best acceptance speech was actually Peter Farrelly, because Green Book won musical or comedy.
Yeah.
And so he got up there and he pretty much was like, we can find common ground. We have a lot in common, and we should find common ground with each other and look at each other as human beings and, and focus on that. Basically, it was like a really, really good speech. And it wasn't, it didn't come off as pandering or pontificating about anything. So I remember just sort of like, oh wow, like this may have just made my night,
Right. Wisdom from a Farrelly brother.
Yeah, I know. But Tara said that overall, she was like, it's not that good. Like I came downstairs after putting the kids to bed. She was like, it's pretty bad. She just said the jokes weren't really landing and it was kind of awkward. I can't think of anything else that happened. They started the first annual Carol Burnett Award for Special Achievement in Television. So they, obviously awarded it to Carol Burnett. So there's a really cool tribute to her. She came up and made a really good speech, and was funny, of course. It was, there were some pretty good moments, but it's always from like big cinema legends or screen legends who seem to not have like a political agenda, who truly seem to be appreciative that they're there. Like Jeff Bridges and Carol Burnett, I think were the highlight of the night for me.
Awesome.
Man, it was cool. So, yeah.
Well, and that's what it should be about, an appreciation of the art rather than anything else.
Right, exactly. Not always the case, as we know.
No. Right.
Okay, so yeah, anyway, that was last night. I can't think of really anything else. You want to get into some movie reviews?
Yeah, let's do it.
So we had an agenda tonight. We sort of had to go to our plan B, and part of going to plan B was B for Bandersnatch. It's taking me longer than I anticipated to get through Bandersnatch because due to its multiple plot lines nature. So I'll say for now is it's strange, and I intend to get to an ending, and then I'm going to look online for an infographic of the of all the plot permutations, so I can then know all the others without having to watch it, because it has been a time investment so far.
Right, sure.
And I'm sort of sick of playing along. I just want it to end so I can know what happens.
Right.
I fear there shall be no closure for me. But the other thing that we watched that we did see was Dustin, you told me about this a couple of weeks ago. So I finally did sit down, and in two parts, of course, I did watch You Were Never Really Here. Will you set that up?
Yeah, sure. So You Were Never Really Here is directed by Lynn Ramsey. It stars Joaquin Phoenix and a bunch of other people that you probably don't know. The film follows Joaquin Phoenix's character, who I believe is named Joe, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah.
And we're not giving her his last name, anything like that, but his name is Joe. Joe is sort of a traumatized gunman, a hired gun, if you will.
Always a good mix.
Right. And he rescues young women from sex trafficking. So he is hired by a man who says, look, they stole my daughter. I need you to get her back. And he does that. But by doing that, incites a whole world of violence that comes against him and this young girl. And then meanwhile, he's got sort of this B story taking care of his mother, who is an elderly lady that he's very close with. And And so you get to see a little bit of his humanity there, and how he deals with his mother.
Yeah.
And then the film kind of takes a few twists and turns throughout, that leaves you somewhat kind of confused, somewhat kind of wondering what's real and what's not real, what's absolutely set in stone and what's still kind of ambiguous. And so the film is maybe not one for somebody who seeks perfect closure and perfect answers to every little thing. But if you're craving a little bit of mystery and a little bit of, like I said, ambiguity in your films, then this will serve you well. I think that pretty much covers the plot. But I'm more curious in to know what you thought of this, Hooper.
Let's see. I liked it for the most part. It was one of those where the ending was, to me, not as satisfying, but I was actually really on board with the style of the movie. I appreciated I thought the sound design was really good and important, obviously, to the plot. I thought that these sort of metaphorical technique, I thought it was a really good example of the nonverbal storytelling and minimal dialogue. There was nothing in there that I really perceived as expository dialogue. It was, there's an exchange he has with the gunman in his house that was like perfect in terms of how it was executed, in my opinion. I thought all of the acting was in the faces. The dialogue itself was minimal, bare necessities kind of stuff. And ended very profoundly. There's a particular scene that takes place, not totally, but there's a moment that occurs underwater, that's all, with no dialogue and is a kind of metaphorical thing. And, I thought it was very clearly sort of expressed what he was feeling. From the moment he's made one decision and then decides to make another decision, and what he perceives as his motivation for that. You know what I'm saying? And I loved it. Joaquin Phoenix is so good, and he really makes this character in this movie. And because it's so minimal with dialogue, like you're trained really early to pay attention and look, because it's not gonna be one of those where you can you clip your fingernails while you listen to them talk. Like this is like, no, people are going to communicate non-verbally, and every bit of stillness is important. And so you will pay attention to this film, and because they do a good job of grabbing you at the beginning, I really responded to these filmmaking techniques, and I thought it was a really well executed movie for that. And I also thought that the violence, like when it needed to be shocking, it was shocking, and when it needed to be minimal, it was simply implied. And pretty cool stylistic. Like it reminded me in some areas of like a student film, in that way, where they're like, okay, we don't have any blood packs, so let's just pat him, and then we'll come back and he's already hit the guy, or this, I liked that there were camera angles that were sort of odd, and would sort of pop back to somewhere and he's already made it, most of the way across the shot, it sort of increased that sense of either urgency or progression. Like, oh, he's already here. Okay, cool. So he's going pretty quickly. Okay, cool. And definitely increased this feeling several times of them doing that of, oh, he's pretty stealthy. Like it sort of reminded you that he's in a movie where I feel like sometimes, it would be easy to put a random bystander who witnesses either him entering a place or him leaving a place. Yeah. To where it'd be really easy to go,
what's going on? Yeah.
So there was only like a small bit of me that was like, where are all the people? Where's all the random hikers and stuff?
Right.
There's no canoer in this lake? Come on, not a single person is canoeing.
Right.
There's not a father and son. Like, let's leave, son. But yeah, it's not really about that. It's a really small kind of intimate story. As far as the ending goes, I sort of was left like this with this, this tiny sense of like what the ending sort of did for him, on a character level, but mostly it's still sort of like, okay, I guess I still wish I, had a little bit more closure than that. But I suppose these days with some of these endings, like you're just supposed to be satisfied with like any positive, any small bit of hope the film leaves you with these days. You're supposed to sort of just like take it and say, thank you. Thank you for the arc, even though it's like 1%.
Right,
like,
exactly.
The world is 1% better at the end of this film than it was at the beginning.
Yes.
But I did enjoy it. I was a little let down by the ending, but that's just me. That's just some hero's journey shit for me.
And that's 100% what I was kind of wondering how you would react to that, because I think you and I are fairly similar in that way. I agree with you. I think I really love how trimmed down the movie was. There didn't seem to be anything that wasn't necessary, and that goes down to actual different scenes and sequences. But even shot wise, there didn't seem to be a single shot that didn't have some reason to be there. If the camera needed to linger, it lingered. And if the camera needed to cut, it cut. And the editors were not afraid, like you said, of cutting around the violence rather than showing the violence.
Yeah.
And I think that, in fact, that was a very intentional choice by the director here. I really enjoyed the movie, and I agree with you. It's not one you can clip your nails to. I started watching this at work, just kind of on my second monitor while I worked.
Yeah.
And I very quickly was like, I can't do that. Yeah. I'm missing everything. So it's a movie that demands your attention, which is sometimes really, really great. There are movies that think they're doing that, and there are movies that are actually doing that. And this is one that actually demands your attention, and not in a way that makes you feel like, oh, this movie thinks it's smarter than me, but rather in a way that's like, this movie has something to tell me, and it's not going to spoon feed it to me. I have to figure it out. So I really appreciated that. I thought the performances were great. But I'm with you on the ending. I think that the ending, and it's not that I have a problem with ambiguous endings or endings that are, a little less than final. But I think that sometimes I get so caught up in the character that I'm not ready to let it be done yet. And so I think that's a good thing. But having said that, I also completely believe, having sort of ruminated on this for the last, week, 2 weeks, something like that, that if that ending had gone any other way, it probably would have ruined the movie. Because as it stands, it can be a lot of different things, and it can mean a lot of different things. And one of the fun things is, and I won't spoil them here, but you can go to Google and just type in this movie and type in theories. And there are a ton of different theories about what this movie actually is saying and what it is showing you, and how what you think you see, you don't actually see. And so I think the fact that this movie inspires those sort of theories, and it's not just like, what if the whole time they were in Jurassic Park? And it's just something like really like out there that's like, no, this is not a theory. This is just you being an idiot.
It's just you. But just go watch Jurassic Park.
Right. But instead, these are like actual theories that are interpretations of the film itself.
Yeah.
And so, there's enough question mark left that you can interpret the film in a few different ways. And so I think if it were final, maybe it wouldn't be as fun. But if it were, any less concrete, it would also just fall completely apart. So I really do have to commend the screenwriter, which I think is the director. So Lynn Ramsey, hats off to you, because she wrote and made a movie that has no fat on it and gives you just enough to allow you to create an interpretation in your head. but never enough to force feed you anything, and never so little that you feel like it's a waste of time. And that's a really difficult needle to thread, but she does it expertly, and it just helps that this is Joaquin Phoenix. I think that a lesser actor would have bombed the movie too. So everything just kind of worked together here for really a really fun, I don't know if I'll say fun, but a really good artistic moving experience. And there's a few shots in here, a few moments that are really, really sticking with me. And actually, maybe this is the best thing I can say, because I tend to kind of live in this spot when I'm talking about movies, is I want to rewatch it. And so a lot of times, people will say like, oh, but wasn't whatever such a really great movie, like Moonlight or whatever. And it's like, well, maybe, but I don't really feel like watching it again. And so that kind of makes me vote it, or like rank it lower than something that's even kind of stupid that I want to see again. Like rewatchability is huge for me. And so this movie is rewatchable. And so I feel like that's one of the best things I can say about it, is that when you're done, you kind of want to start it over again. And I think it's a really good movie that allows you to feel that way. So I'm completely on board. I really, really enjoyed this movie. And it probably sounds like I'm talking out of both sides of my mouth here. But I wish it was more finite, but at the same time, completely understand why it isn't, and artistically respect the choice that it's not. So yeah, that's where I'm at on it.
Yeah. Where would you give it as far as a star rating? What do you think?
I think I'd give it a 4.
I think I'd give it a 4. Yeah.
Yeah. It's like I said, it's so well made and rewatchable that while it's not necessarily a fun watch, the subject matter is certainly heavy. It's just so engrossing, and like I said, I just care for this character so much by the end of it that I'm not quite ready for it to be done. It's a very trim 90 minutes. So
yeah, it is.
Yeah. What about you?
Star rating? Yeah, I'd give 4. Okay. Yeah. Yeah.
Cool.
Yeah, because I on a technical level, I certainly think it's well executed, and I agree. Like I think sometimes all it really does take is good direction and a good performance, and it you've got something that people want to just see again. They want to put their eyes through that experience again. Yeah. Oh God, what were we watching? Oh, there's some film in particular lately where like my kids were too young to understand what was going on, but I was watching it and I can't remember what it was. But the cinematography was so good that I think I mentioned like my son sort of being glued to it the whole time. And again, not really realizing what it was. I can't remember what it would have been that I let him sit around during, but I don't know. Anyway, it just, the point was like that just sort of shows you that like if you make what's going on visually like just the right mixture of stuff, like you don't want to look away, and a lot of movies can't do that. You Were Never Really Here is on Amazon Prime, so if you have a Prime account, you can stream it right now, and you should. Okay, let's talk about If Beale Street Could Talk, Dustin.
Okay.
Because this was speaking of the Golden Globes, this had a couple nominations last night, and I think others for Producers Guild, maybe.
Yes.
I don't know anything about this film. So tell me about it.
So If Beale Street Could Talk is the newest film from Barry Jenkins, who just brought us Moonlight. It stars. Yeah, so it stars Kiki Lane, who I believe is a newcomer, Stephen James, Regina King, and again, a bunch of people that you probably don't know as well, or at least I don't. It is based on a book by James Baldwin, but Barry Jenkins wrote the screenplay for the film. It is the story of two young people who fall in love, and the young man is falsely accused of a crime and sent to prison. And so the story is told in a non-linear fashion, so we're constantly going from the present to the past, and seeing sort of this young romance bloom and bud, and there's a lot of really, really great sort of deep implications of, you know, what love is and what does it mean to fall in love. And, you know, this sort of, you know, it's a love story at heart that also tells the story of a social injustice where a man is falsely accused of a crime simply because he's a young African-American man in the wrong place at the wrong time. It's, you know, a timely movie. It's one of those that I think is certainly just by measure of its subject matter alone, you know, is an interesting and important story to tell. Having said all of that, I kind of was bored by it. And it's not a bad movie. You know, the cinematography is great. The performances are all brilliant. Everything is just kind of like done so well, and yet it's missing that spark. It's missing that thing that just draws you to it, and no amount of good concept or good premise or important story can overcome a boring execution. And so that's sort of the movie's fatal flaw, and probably there's a whole group of people that will love this movie. You know, as you mentioned, the Academy is going to eat it up. The industry as a whole kind of loves this sort of thing. For me, not so much. It's not very rewatchable. It just seemed kind of like because it's told in a nonlinear fashion, it kind of loses some of the drama, because when we're flashing back to, you know, these moments of young love, we know how it ends. Like, we know where it goes. And so it doesn't feel like there's very much at stake in the in the flashback scenes, other than, you know, it's just telling us character things, which is normally fine. But if there's no forward momentum or stakes involved in those scenes, I don't really have much of a reason to want to see it. And that's the thing, you know, it's been a while since I've seen this, but that's the thing that sticks out most, is that it felt like in the present day there was a really good story to be told, but it kept losing itself in flashbacks that had no urgency. And while they revealed character, they didn't move the story forward. And so that's what I think made it boring. Was we're watching large chunks of this film that aren't actually moving the more interesting story forward, but instead just kind of trying to give you like appendix material to what you've already seen, which you've already seen that these two people are in love and that one of them is in jail. I don't also need to see how they fell in love. Not necessarily. And maybe this is handled better in the book, and maybe I'm just the wrong person for this. But I think the main thing to take away here is that it's a flawed movie in that it's not focused. It has two stories that it wants to tell, and they're not intertwined enough to move each other forward. It's like every time we move, we're just seeing like a completely different aside. It's like, here's a vignette and here's a vignette, but after a while that becomes really old, and the movie clocks in at about 2 hours, and to me it felt like 3. All that said, as boring as it is, or as structurally flawed as it is, I I can't say it's a bad movie because, like I said, the performances are great, the cinematography is great, the direction is great, all the pieces are there, but it's so frustrating to watch. So the way I have to look at this is like I could give it a 3, right, and say it's fine. But at the bottom line is I ended up a little bit frustrated because what I wanted I didn't get. The more interesting story it put on the back burner for the less interesting story, time and time and time again. So I was frustrated. So all in all, as competent as the film is, and as well made as it is, I gotta give it around 2 stars. And if somebody said, no, this is a 3-star for sure, I'd say, okay, I can get behind that because it is well made. But 2 stars, I think, is where it lives for me.
Yeah, well, it's so when I think about movies, I've become to know myself a little better in the past year, Dustin, and when I think about what I should rate a movie. Like I've been reviewing. I have this very binary way of not binary, but dual. I have dual criteria for how I rate a film, and one criteria is okay. So let's do a star rating of how much I enjoyed it, and let's do a star rating of how well made it is.
Yeah,
and it's pretty much the average of those two numbers is how I sort of rate it overall. So while this film has a lot of like technical or other accolades that you can appreciate as an artist, when it comes down to it, like the enjoyment level is going to bring down the score.
Yeah, absolutely. Like I said,
it might be a 3-star film, like on a technical aspect, but there's a whole nother category.
Right, exactly. And like I said, if I don't want to rewatch it, if I never saw this movie again, that'd be fine.
Oh, that's not good.
I don't have any interest in going back to revisit it. But at the same time, like I should, because it's also forgettable. Like there's a lot, like knowing I was going to do the review of it tonight, I went back on Wikipedia and tried to refresh myself. Okay, what exactly happened here? Like what was the process of it all happening? And that's when I realized like I remember all of it, but I had to have my memory jogged. And so to me, it means it's a forgettable movie. And like I said, like if you don't enjoy watching it, then it can be as well made as anything else. But if you don't have a good time watching it, then what's the point?
Yeah.
And if you don't have fun, then how could I sit here and tell you, the listener, to go watch it? Because I didn't enjoy myself.
I shared with someone today the Plinkett Last Jedi video, and he said he fixated on Rian Johnson saying the sentence, "What I don't want is for people to walk out of the theater and have seen a good movie." And he said, "What the hell does that mean?"
Right.
And it's that same thing. It's like films are supposed to be entertaining and they can be profound and important and all that stuff, but at the end of the day, you're still making a piece of art that people are supposed to digest and feel good watching. And
I always try to think in my mind before filmmaking existed as a medium. Storytelling was written, and before storytelling was written, it was just spoken to people. Right. So if I'm sitting around a fire, and I'm some Neanderthal or what have you, and I'm sitting around a fire and someone else is telling me a story, I always equate movie stories to that experience. So in this case, take away, like close your eyes, close your ears, take away all the cinematography, all the acting, all the directing, all of the music, all of that. And if somebody just told me this story exactly as it unfolded here, I would not say, man, tell me that story again. I wouldn't say, wow, that was deeply affecting and moving. I would say, no, hold on, stop. Go back to the other thing.
Mm-hmm.
Tell me about that other thing. Tell me the A story.
Yeah.
Finish that one. And then if they say, no, it's important. You have to have both. Okay, well, hurry up through the B story then and get to the A and tell me that one. And if I'm arguing with the storyteller in that way, then I'm clearly not involved in the story. I'm clearly completely separated. And that's not a good sign.
No.
Whereas something like You Were Never Really Here, if it were that same thing where I'm sitting around a campfire and the director is telling me this story, I'm engrossed. Like I feel like I would be like, okay, yeah, tell me more. And when they get to the end and they tell me how it ends, I would be like, oh wow, whoa, like dude, say it again.
Mm-hmm.
Tell me all that again. Like I want to hear it again now, knowing how it ends, so that I can filter that through the whole movie again.
Yeah.
And so I always equate it to that. That's probably like really weird, but that's just the way I look at story. Is like, if you told it to me, just in a car on a drive somewhere, would I really be that interested, or would I be looking at the street signs and like the cows were passing? And so that's where I found myself with If Beale Street Could Talk. Is I'm more interested in watching the clock tick or the cows were driving past than actually hearing this story happen again.
It's in theaters, right now?
It is. Okay. It is in theaters. It may be kind of like select at this point. I think it opened on Christmas Day, and this seemed like a smaller release, but I could be wrong.
Okay, well that's a Beale Street Could Talk. Do you want to talk about before we get out of here? Do you want to talk about a little documentary?
Yeah, let's do it.
So a while back, I read a book and Dustin watched the documentary that was subsequently made of a story called Life Animated. And the book is written by a guy named Ron Suskind, who is who's written lots of books. He's a New York Times bestseller, Pulitzer Prize winning journalist. Writes a lot. He's just one of those things where I always sort of admired the career of someone who was like a columnist for like, a bunch of different publications in the Northeast, like the Washington Post, the New York Times, but who also like cranked out a novel, or a not really novel because he doesn't write fiction, but I think he writes some fiction. I don't know. He writes all kinds, I think. Anyway, but just crank out a book every like 4 years. Like that seems pretty cool. Like within the course of reading this book, he's talking about like several books he was working on like at the time in each stage of what's going on here in the story. The story, of course, is primarily considering he and his wife and their oldest son, and how they were affected and what they did for their young son Owen, who was diagnosed with autism. I think around 3 or 4. But I tangentially know this story, but Dustin's the one who's seen what we're talking about, which is the documentary. And was it on Hulu?
It's on Amazon Prime.
It's on Prime. Okay.
Yep.
Yeah. And so this was made a couple years. This book's fairly recent. It's like 2013 or something, 2015 maybe.
Yeah, I think the movie's from 2016.
Okay, so it's a pretty I think on the title of this book here, which I think I got in 2016. Yep, now an award-winning motion picture. So they had just made the documentary. Yeah. What did you think of this documentary, Dustin?
This documentary I think hits pretty hard. This is a really it's a really encouraging, uplifting, inspirational story, but it's also sad, and it's also tinged with that sort of melancholy that goes with parenting a child with a disability, all the while completely understanding that the person with the disability doesn't know life any differently and is enjoying themselves. So it's that same sort of mixed bag, I think, for the viewer, where we're allowed to see both the sad and the incredibly happy, and that's just a really, I think, a really good experience for a viewer, to be able to feel all of those feelings all sort of at once throughout this entire movie. It never gets bogged down in melancholy or bogged down in, just incredible joy to, while ignoring the hardships. It does a really, really great job of doing both. The main character, Owen, the subject of the documentary, Owen is fun to watch. He's funny. He's really everything you'd want in a leading man. He has a goal. He has something that he's working towards, and he is working towards it. And he has obstacles. Some of those presented by his disability, and some of those are external. But regardless, he works hard and works to achieve that goal. And so in that way, it's just like any hero's journey. And getting to know him and his family and their different personalities and the way that they're able to interact with one another is literally just a fun, emotional thing to sit and watch. So I highly recommend this movie, and I would say especially if you are a fan of Disney movies, this movie is the story of how Owen finds his voice through Disney. So it's a little bit of a love story to Disney animated films, as much as it is, a love story to autism, and a love story to parenting, and a love story to Owen himself. There's a lot of really fun things and good moments for people like me who grew up on these Disney movies and know them inside and out. I think the number one thing, I've seen this twice now. And when I watched it with my wife, I think the number one thing that we both came away with was just the feeling of encouragement that, say what you will about box office dollars, and say what you will about the downsides of the film industry, but movies really do and really can help give voice to people, not just in showing their story the way that this film did, showing the story of a specific person, or in the case of a fictional story, maybe an archetype or a fictionalized version of some sort, but film can also give voice in that just the love of movies can give you something to talk about. What it reminded me of, and I don't know, maybe this is sappy, maybe this is hokey, but one of the first things that I remember talking to you, Hooper, or John, or any of our friends about was movies. And so it's a really powerful thing that gives you a voice and gives you something to talk about. And that's what Disney did for Owen. And so kind of having that validated, that an obsession with movies, or an obsession with cartoons, or an obsession with whatever it may be is not a bad thing. That is something that is a beautiful thing, because if it's something that you're passionate about, it energizes and gives life to you, and to see a small mute child find that in Iago, a stuffed parrot, is just a beautiful thing to see. And so I'm trying to really gush on the movie because I just loved it. It's just such a fun thing to watch, and I highly recommend it for anybody out there who, like I said, loves Disney, loves movies in general, has some sort of passion for people with disabilities, specifically autism and on the autistic spectrum. I highly recommend it. That's where I'm gonna end it. I just really, really recommend, if you have the time and you have, Amazon Prime, check it out. It's definitely worth your time.
It really is a beautiful story. And I'm with you. Like, for me, like seeing someone who loved movies as much as I did, in their childhood, and how it sort of gave them sort of like a place they could go, and something that they could turn to relate their ideas and their identities to. But also, as to see someone who just a little perspective, like, yeah, it helped you because you didn't really like have that much you felt comfortable talking to other people about. Meanwhile, this kid has like legitimate developmental setbacks, and so be glad for what it does for you, but also like be impressed by what someone like him, like what it did for someone like him who really needed this. Like,
absolutely.
It's humbling.
It is.
To see that.
And it just proves that this thing that we're passionate about, movies, is not something that's trivial. It's not something that is unimportant. It's art, and art teaches people and gives voice and gives motivation and gives people the ability to take that first step. And anytime, I find myself in this position a lot of, our movies really actually all that important in the grand scheme of things? And the answer is they're as important as anything else. They're as important as anything because it gives to people in different ways. And so someone like Owen needed it. So to say anything less than Disney animated movies were necessary is not giving them the power they deserve.
I needed it. I mean, there's an episode of this show, and it's called "Our Film Is Film Important," and the episode is mostly me feeling very negatively about the state of the industry, and what storytelling had become, in my opinion, at the time, and Dustin was defending it, basically, or essentially encouraging me not to lose hope. And, sometime after that, I'm not quite sure of the timeline, but it's my story. So, sometime after that, I saw Logan, and Logan, as I've said before on the show, if a film like Logan can come along and make me look inside myself and recognize very, very extremely serious flaws that I needed to fix immediately, not for my sake, but for my family, that's especially at the time, how I felt about things at the time. Like it's powerful. First of all, to get me to change anything is a task. For art to have that sort of impact on me, you can imagine, you see what it does for Owen, and you can imagine what it does for people in general. The right film at the right time. God, this sounds stupid. Are you ready for this?
Yep, I'm ready.
Can change a heart. And
one man.
That's a letter from the Riddler. And he writes, it can, though. It really can. I mean, hell, you show the right movie to Kim Jong-un, and maybe he'll put the nukes down. I mean,
right.
Who knows? I'm not saying that. Not in like a flower power way. But the fact that if you give someone a story the right way, who knows? Who knows what it can do? So whenever people get up on those stages and they pontificate, part of me is like, shut up, and then part of me is like, they got a point, they got a point.
Well, it's true, and I think what rubs me the wrong way, and not to open a whole new can of worms, but what rubs me the wrong way during those award ceremonies is that they're not actually pontificating on the importance of art.
Yeah.
They're pontificating on the importance of them speaking their mind,
Right.
which it's important that you have the freedom to do so, but I don't know, again, talking out of both sides of my mouth, but what you say, I guess what it boils down to is I balk at anybody who declares themselves important.
Mm-hmm.
And that's what those award ceremonies do. And what I'm saying is not that this movie declares itself important. This movie declares or validates the importance of art in general, and in so doing humbles itself, and that makes it important.
Yep.
That makes it true. And when you get on stage and you're just like, I'm important because I have things to say, then all of a sudden you've lost it.
Yeah, I'm fairly contrarian in that way. I just growing up, I was just very like, oh, you want me to do this? Oh, okay. It must disappoint you so that I shall not now. Yeah, I like to view myself as a check on other people's egos.
Right. Sure.
I consider it my holy crusade. Yeah. I do feel that way. What is this
right.
What I mean? Okay, it's gone. Yeah, okay. Yeah, Life Animated is on Amazon Prime. Check it out. I'd watch it after you're never really here. If you want to do a double feature, just watch it second.
Yes, correct.
Get up, go pee, come back.
Agreed.
Yeah.
Agreed.
Cool. All right, that's it. That's the HooperCast movie hour for this week. Enjoy this on a Monday early in the week, and we shall be back next week.
Yes, we
to
shall.
talk about a couple other things. I think I'm watching. Dustin and I are currently both catching up on our 2018 films so that we can properly compose some lists for our 200th episode. So that will be fun. Yeah. Okay, cool. That's it. Thanks for listening, everybody. Thank you, Dustin. Always a pleasure.
Yeah, absolutely.
All right, everyone. See you next time. Get out there, see some good movies, or in today's case, stay in the house and see some good movies.
Right.
Indeed. All right. Good night, everyone.
Good night.
Woo!